Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to the Question Period. Today is June 12th, 2025, not 2026. I accidentally scheduled the live stream to start June 12th, 2026. Whoops, we would have been waiting a long time, probably 2 years, because I'm always late to even a live stream that I schedule this morning. But here I am, here we are, and there's a lot of stuff to take a look at. In terms of who's going to be in the house today, well, it's not. I don't like joking about it, but the jokes kind of write themselves. It's not going to be Pierre. We know that. Is it going to be Carney? Well, his itinerary doesn't show that. His itinerary isn't even out today, but I assume maybe he'll be there. G7 summit is on the horizon. You've got tariff galore. You've got Danielle Smith, who's saying that Alberta is literally ready to separate. They've got the votes. They're ready to go. They've done the internal polling. Yeah, there's lots to take a look at before we start question period. So we're just going to get right into it. But before we do, come on, guys, hit the like button. What you doing? Hit the like button for crying out loud. Subscribe to the channel. Let's get things going on a positive note. Let's start off here with G7 invitations to India and how, well, that's inviting criticism in Canada. Apparently Canadians don't like it.
Final preparations for the G7, the world's most powerful club, are underway. Prime Minister Mark Carney is opening the summit doors wider.
Why are we inviting Modi and MBS to the G7 in Kananaskis, sir?
The expanded invitation list is dividing the Liberal caucus. In particular, invites to Saudi Arabia and India. Narendra Modi is attending, even though the RCMP has linked his government to the killing of a Sikh Canadian activist in 2023.
There is a credible evidence that agents of Indian government are involved in the assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil.
Other MPs say Canada needs to engage with India, one of the world's largest economies.
We need to engage India in those conversations, make sure that they do cooperate. And that only happens if there is a relationship.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has a close relationship with Donald Trump. His government was also implicated in the 2018 murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The prince hasn't confirmed he's attending the G7, but could help with Carney's nation-building projects.
That Prime Minister Carney wants to really push at this meeting is catalyzing private investment for infrastructure around the world. And the Saudis are, especially their sovereign wealth fund, very big investors.
Later this week, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit Ottawa before attending the G7.
We're living in an era of Donald Trump, and Prime Minister Carney has made it very clear that it is a national security imperative for Canada to develop not just deeper economic ties, but deeper strategic ties as well with countries around the world.
Every leader will be approaching this summit with diplomatic caution, knowing that Donald Trump is unpredictable. In 2018, the last time Trump was in Canada for a G7 meeting, he walked out without signing the final communique.
Of course, why not, right? He was trying to work with Justin Trudeau, and obviously that is almost impossible to do. I don't think that this meeting with Trump at the G7 summit is going to be catastrophic. I think it's going to be very important, and it's going to play a critical role in the tariffs, in the trade, in our defense spending. I think it's going to be very good. At least it's going to be very entertaining if you're a fan of Trump, because he's going to dominate. People are going to the G7 to meet with Trump. They're not going to meet with Canada, even though it's in Alberta. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Everyone's like, oh, Trump, yeah, let's go meet the guy who's making our lives miserable. So, yeah, let's stay tuned, because that's happening very, very soon. Next up, we've got this video clip of Canada's Chief Justice Minister is alluding to the U.S. becoming a dictatorship under President Trump. I hate how officials lie like this. It's so annoying. It's what liberals do, though. It's what liberals do. Let's take a look here. This is a clip on Twitter, or X.
There is no doubt that the rule of law and the judicial independence is under attack in many countries in the world, When you see governments attacking the media, attacking the judges, attacking the lawyers, and universities, of course, that means that there's a good chance that you are in front of a dictatorship, autocratic government. But there are many places in the world living through those events right now. And I think we have to be careful. So the message for the people is be careful, but be optimistic as well. Because in Canada, we have a strong legal system. We have our challenges, underfunding occasionally, delays, cost, but we have a strong judicial system. And we have good lawyers, good jurists across the country, well-trained. We have good law faculty, good law professors, great universities. We have good judges, well-trained judges, independent judges, impartial judges, and judges governed by ethical principles, which is not the case in many countries around us. And so that's why they should be optimistic about the future. But we have to defend those institutions. We have to defend the traditional media. We have to defend our courts, and we should not take anything for granted. But I think we should be optimistic. I think that the main stakeholders in Canada respect separation of powers, respect judicial independence, and are happy to live in a country where the rule of law will prevail. Everybody is equal under the law. And, we live in a country where judges, there is a bilingualism in federal institutions. Judges, for the Supreme Court, for instance, we work in common law and civil law the same day, French, English. We provide our own knowledge if they want our knowledge and expertise to other legal systems in the world. Our jurisprudence at all levels are referred to by other countries in the world. We have a lot to offer. We have a lot to offer. And that's the message I give to the Canadian citizens.
We have a lot to offer. These are the same people that are saying that our judges are treating Canadian-born protesters protesting a liberal government are somehow getting a fair trial and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that the judges have absolutely just demoralized people by making claims like what they did to Tamara Leach and the Freedom Convoy folks. I mean, that's just disgusting. But then they let out repeat offenders all the time. Our judges are corrupt. They're not trustworthy. Nobody trusts our judicial system here in Canada except liberal politicians. I mean, it's insane. Absolutely insane. And speaking of insane, we definitely have to take a look at this BC shipyard controversy. So British Columbia, if you've never been out west, there's a big island. Well, it's a relatively large island that populates 400,000 or 500,000 people, maybe more. And it's right off of Vancouver. It's called Vancouver Island. And there's no bridge to get there. You can fly there, but the only way to get there by boat or by foot is by a ferry. And it's not privately owned. It's subsidized by the BC government. It's called BC Ferries. Now, our premier, instead of, because they want to buy more ferries, they want to construct more ferries, instead of having them constructed here in Canada by Canadian companies, David Eby, the premier of BC, actually bought the ferries from China. You can't make that up. So you talk about Canada's deep-rooted history with China and how a lot of politicians seem to be compromised by China. It's actually like a real thing. It's a real thing. And we're going to take a look at that right now.
After announcing its decision to award the contract for 4 new ferries to a Chinese state-owned company, BC Ferries has found itself in choppy waters.
We should be doing everything we can to get it done in BC.
Urging the NDP government to step in and overturn the contract in a country currently involved in a trade war with Canada.
China today is a risk And the reason why I say that is you never know about the political tensions.
The head of the union that covers BC Ferries workers is also concerned.
Moving this work offshores, when we're hearing from the Prime Minister, build, baby, build, and we hear from the Premier, buy BC. I guess I'm the only person who's putting Canada first.
BC Ferries stressing that no Canadian company bid on the contract and that China Merchants Industry Weihai shipyards ticked a lot of boxes.
This shipyard has given us the best combination of good experience, technical capability, size and scale, safety management, affordability, and confidence that they can deliver the ships that we need on the schedule that we require.
BC-based Seaspan said in a statement they're busy building ships for the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard at its North Vancouver shipyard. But the American-owned company says it is hopeful it can work with the BC government on a strategy to build future BC Ferries replacement vessels. McNeely, though, says Canadian companies cannot compete with Chinese shipbuilders who receive state subsidies and have cheaper labor costs.
Canadian yards here, Seaspan included, they weren't passed over because they can't do the work. They're passed over because the rules are rigged.
BC's transportation minister says BC Ferries made a business decision, and it's not one the BC government can interfere with.
Am I disappointed that it's not here in BC? Absolutely.
BC Ferries isn't saying how much the contract cost, saying it could compromise future bids. The 4 new ferries are expected to set sail between 2029 and 2031. Katie DeRosa, CBC News.
That's absurd, man. Buying boats from China instead of having them made here in Canada. Like the deep-rooted ties that Canada still maintains to China is inexcusable. When are we going to finally wake up, right? When are we going to finally wake up and move away from China and start producing things here in North America, specifically in Canada? At least if it was made in America, it's like, okay, well, whatever. At least it's not China, but no. Why go to China for stuff like that? It's just bizarre. It's bizarre. Anyways, I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Now we're going to take a look at another video. Why Trump says everything is an emergency in terms of protests, tariffs, and the borders. This is the CBC segment called About That. I usually like their breakdowns, and we're going to comment on it as it goes along.
Donald Trump does a lot of things he's not ordinarily supposed to do.
The U.S. president has called up members of the California National Guard.
We are getting news from multiple U.S. agencies that about 700 U.S. Marines have been mobilized.
And by that I mean the law, by default, and this has been true for 150 years, it simply doesn't allow for it. Trump cannot deploy the military to put down civil unrest unless what's happening in California, for example, isn't just protest, but rebellion, maybe even insurrection.
What do you think about the Insurrection Act to deal with the situation in California?
If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see.
And it's not just California. Trump's read of the entire country right now is that it is besieged by a staggering range of national emergencies. A border emergency, a drug emergency, an energy emergency, a trade emergency, and that the U.S. is under constant threat of war and invasion.
As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do.
Now look, admittedly, some of this is just for dramatic effect, like that time in April when Trump fought back against the Obama-Biden war on showers. But some of it is actual legal justification, like when Trump deported alleged gang members to El Salvador without the usual due process by accusing them of being terrorists carrying out a literal invasion of the United States.
They emptied jails out, other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion.
It begs the question whether Trump is presiding over a kind of permanent emergency government, bypassing Congress and ruling by executive order with largely undefined, meaning near limitless, power. Let's start in LA.
You know what's kind of funny is the fact that people who supported the Emergencies Act being invoked on the Freedom Convoy in Canada don't support what Trump is doing in LA. I don't know how else to spell it out, but it's kind of funny when you think about it in that context, isn't it? I mean, this is an actual like insurrection that's happening, that's taking place. And it does require police force because there's people that are burning cars down. There's people that are blocking the freeways. It's not a controlled, it's not a pre-authorized protest. The convoy had literally the city's approval to be there. Like the police said, come and park here. This is where you have your permit for this protest. And with the LA protest, that's not the case at all. It's like just total anarchy. And liberals and Democrats are going, I think Trump is overreaching. But then also those same people supported Trudeau and the Liberal government in Canada invoking the Emergencies Act. It's just so backwards. It's so hilariously hypocritical, right? When you point it out like that. Anyways.
Unilaterally call the National Guard into any state in any numbers, but only if the threat constitutes a rebellion against the U.S. government or otherwise prevents the president from executing laws. Now, that's a high bar to reach, rebellion against the U.S. government. But the way the Trump administration sees it and what it says justifies sending in the military, numerous incidents of violence continue in response to personnel who are performing federal functions. And here's the key part. To the extent that protests or acts of violence directly inhibit the execution of the laws, they constitute a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Okay, but let's ask another question. If this is open rebellion against the U.S. government, what isn't?
Rebellion, again, to me, always implies some sort of armed, organized effort to not just criticize the government, but literally trying to overthrow the democratically elected government of the United States. It would be a very dangerous thing to characterize basically these protests as rebellions, because it's tough to imagine the protests that wouldn't.
That's what democracy is all about. There has to be room for that. So the question is, where do you draw the line between people engaging in good democratic protest on the one hand and speaking their minds, and on the other hand, getting in the way of government doing what government is supposed to do?
And this question, is this really an emergency that warrants the use of emergency powers? It is the kind of question I hear being asked more and more.
First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border.
On day one of Trump's second term, he would declare a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, saying the influx of illegal migrants threatened America's sovereignty. This, despite the fact that for the better part of a year, the number of border apprehensions had already been steadily decreasing. But this allowed Trump to substantially increase manpower and resources deployed there.
I will also declare a national energy emergency.
That same day,
Trump just isn't messing around, like, at all, which is kind of refreshing to see. And this is honestly what Americans voted for. I don't think Canada could vote for this. I don't think Canada in the just general speaking terms, I think Canada's a little too progressive to vote for something like this. But again, it's pretty cool to see a leader actually care about the country that he's leading.
Day, another executive order declaring a national energy emergency, allowing him to fast-track oil and mineral production. He blamed Biden for a deteriorating situation that required immediate remedy, and which a lawsuit accuses Trump of doing so he can bypass environmental protection laws. Another day one priority. A sudden decision that drug cartels constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat, and so I hereby declare a national emergency. This cleared the way for Trump to brand certain gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, which would set the stage for the deportations we would see a couple of months later. Trump would also, very abruptly, come to see Canada as a national security threat, targeting the flow of fentanyl across the border. He invoked the National Emergencies Act to justify punitive tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, Canada's very loosey-goosey. At least we were. I don't know if we're tightening up under the Liberals, under Carney. I would like to think that we are, but realistically, we're probably not. And Canada, we all know, you know, I know, we all know we're a security threat to our neighbors in America. I mean, our immigration system is so flawed. People can pretend to be part of LGB whatever, and they can just seek asylum in this country. Like, that's insane. You just put on a little feminine voice and a lisp, and all of a sudden now you're a Canadian. Like, what is going on? It's crazy what's going on.
Despite the truth of the matter, which was that Canada is estimated by U.S. officials themselves to be responsible for only a tiny fraction of all incoming fentanyl, less than 1%. And all those Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs imposed on account of trade deficits the U.S. has with many countries around the world. Once again, this familiar language, an unusual and extraordinary threat, and I hereby declare a national emergency. It didn't seem to be an important factor in Trump's declaration that the U.S. has had trade deficits with many countries for decades. That's what happens when your citizens have more purchasing power than just about everybody else. But suddenly calling it an emergency is the legal basis for being able to impose, without any congressional involvement at all, sweeping tariffs on nearly every single country on planet Earth.
So tariffs are supposed to be the domain of Congress. They're not supposed to belong to the White House and the president. The only way the president is allowed to take control of tariffs are through these emergency measures that were granted to him by Congress.
The fact of the matter is, over the years, Congress has passed all sorts of laws authorizing all sorts of actions in response to all sorts of emergencies, give or take. So a creative and determined president can find some statutory warrant for doing just about whatever he wants to do.
And I should point out, I've only mentioned so far a very small number of all the times Trump has invoked emergency powers as a means of getting things done with as little discussion and oversight as possible. Journalists.
Yeah. I mean, the majority of Americans actually agree that these are emergencies worthy of the powers that Trump is using. I mean, CBC can bitch and complain all they want, and Canadian Liberals can bitch and complain all they want. Americans see this as valid, and they're happy that Trump is taking action. So it's kind of as Joey Tribbiani says, it's a moot point. It's a cow's opinion at this point.
At the Associated Press have tracked how often past presidents have cited the National Emergencies Act and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act over the course of their terms. Here's George W. Bush's first term. And keep in mind, he was president during the 9/11 attack. Here's his second term. Barack Obama's first term looks like this, explained in part because he presided over the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression, and here is his second term. And then here's Trump's first term and Biden's only term. Layer them all on top of each other and you start to notice a trend. But then look at the first few months of Trump's second term. This is why I've seen some media call this the 911 presidency, where the use of emergency powers has become central to governing.
What we're seeing with Trump and this continual declaration of emergency after emergency is just an ongoing increase of presidential power with very little interest from
you're trying to reverse engineer. You're trying to say that he's using his powers too often, but you're totally negating the fact that the powers are worthy of being used in the first place.
Other branches in checking that power.
This is of a piece with what many folks see as a slide in America's democratic standings.
Now, I don't want to leave you with the impression that Trump is the only president who has ever stretched the definition of an emergency. You may remember, for example, when Joe Biden tried to cancel more than $400 billion worth of federal student debt using the COVID national emergency that was already in place as justification. The U.S. Supreme Court would later decide you can't do that. But most experts agree Trump has taken this approach to a whole new level.
Other presidents have, invoked emergency authority, sometimes in circumstances where there was a lot of dispute as to whether there was an actual emergency or not. What I think sets Trump apart is that is where he starts. He starts with, these things are emergencies, therefore extraordinary use of my powers as president are justified and necessary.
Now, Trump's administration has said on many occasions now,
the president was right to declare a national emergency when it came to fentanyl and when it came to our crippling deficits and the lack of critical supply chains here at home.
It drives home, how much of a national emergency we're in, that we've lost critical skills, and we weren't even aware that we had lost those skills until a few months ago.
But what actually constitutes an emergency? How do you define one?
Riots in the streets,
That's not really
chaos, vandalism, looting.
When you look at the statutes, it doesn't really define clearly what a threat to national security is. And so the president has all the power to decide what exactly that means.
I think when these laws were being written, Congress was expecting that future presidents would use these powers carefully and solemnly. If Spain decides to invade Florida, we want the president to be able to react quickly, and we don't want to tie his hands with lots of procedures and process and that sort of thing.
So here's the bottom line. There is no shortage of opinionated people out there who believe this is part of a rapid descent into authoritarianism, the erosion of American democracy, a sign of dark times ahead. Or, for Trump's most vocal supporters, this is simply a man who has identified a series of problems and is getting things done. But one thing has been made clear. Until a court or Congress decides to rein in this unchecked power, an emergency is really only one thing. It's what the president says it is, whether that's Trump or whomever comes after him.
Yeah, that's objectively a true statement, but in this case, it's very misleading and disingenuous to not consider the fact that these riots in LA are actual emergencies. And this is what's wrong with the woke left. They're taking a very clear example of a time where using emergency powers in America is actually warranted. And they're going, well, if it happens now, it could happen whenever else. Like, yeah, for emergencies, dude. If Trump literally wanted to use the military to take over the public, he would have done it by now. That's insane. The guy is like one of the most patriotic Americans. Literally took a bullet for the country and then became president. Give me a freaking break. Anyways, the woke left never ceases to amaze me at how ridiculous and woke they actually freaking are. And I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and comments down below about this. Do you think that Trump is a crazy big threat to using emergency powers, or do you think that the powers are actually warranted of being used? Let me know. Next, we're going to take a look here at Danielle Smith, who apparently got heckled during an interview by a protester. Let's see how she handles it. This is talking about separation, talking about Alberta politics, and the whole shebang, right? She's doing a great job. By the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Alberta has enough votes now. They got like over almost 40% or more of internal polling data showing that Alberta's ready to go and separate. So we're getting there. We're friggin' getting there. If that's what you're wanting, it seems like it might actually come true.
Yep. Premier Smith, thank you for speaking with us today. Just wondering what your hope is for the outcome of this event.
Well, I hope what happens this evening is people know that we took the recommendations of the Coal Committee seriously in implementing a change of policy, that we are going to be banning any new open pit mines and mountaintop removal, making sure best available technology is used to manage water, and where possible start using some of the new underground mining techniques to avoid disturbing the surface. The Coal Committee also had 4 4 advanced projects that they said could proceed, and those are going through the regulatory process. But I hope that people understand that we do take that seriously. We heard some of the feedback, and we've made the changes in policy for that reason.
And will Albertans get the chance to have their say in this matter? Will there be a referendum?
There was a referendum in Crow's Nest Pass, and 72% of the residents were in favor of it. Any community is able to do the same thing as Crow's Nest Pass did and give us advice. I think that it's obviously an issue that has people on who have a number of different perspectives, but I think the main thing is that we've got to find a way to do mining development that also protects the environment. We haven't mined in this country in any great numbers for almost 30 years. Any mining project bears the risk of potential impact on the environment, but we've got to figure out how to do it. If we're going to move to a new economy and develop batteries, all of the components of batteries have to be dug out of the ground. And so coal is no different, especially metallurgical coal. It goes to make steel. And if we're going to be able to have windmills and farm equipment and all of the appliances and cars that are made with that material, we have to be able to figure out how to mine it so that we can give the people the things that they want, but also have less impact on the environment. I think that there's been a real change in the country since Donald Trump got elected, where we realize we have to be self-sufficient now. We've got to find new markets. We've got to make sure we're developing our resources, and we've got to do it in the most responsible way possible because we're the best at it in the world. So I hope that is one of the messages that will resonate here tonight.
What's up, CBC? What do you say to those folks? We've been speaking to people, and they're saying there's no responsible way to mine coal. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't accept that. I think that we have to remember we're talking about coal that is used to make steel. And in this area, I'm sure that the same people love renewable energy. You can't make solar panels without coal. You can't make wind turbines without coal. You can't drive tractors without making the steel that is going to allow you to make that kind of equipment.
Preach.
We have to have a balanced approach. I think that things got veered off too far, maybe because there was some bad practices in the past. But our solution is to identify the bad practices, change them, and make sure that we're developing in a responsible way. And we've done that. We won't have any new open pit mines. We won't have any mountaintop removal. And we're encouraging companies to look at and explore the underground mining techniques.
Dude, Canada has some of the highest standards in the world when it comes to our labor like that. Working in the mines, oil and gas sector. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to even protest the idea that Canada needs to up the ante even more. I mean, it's insane how high of a standard we have. You can't move a pen across a table in the government without leaving a paper trail. Like our way of life here is, the standard is so high. So the fact that you got all these weirdos protesting, oh, it's so bad for the environment. No, it's not, man. You have 10 professionals that are doing research to figure out if it's even viable to cut one tree down in Canada. It's insane. It's insane. It's hard to get anything done because we're so focused on people's feelings. Don't get me wrong. It does help protect our land, our environment. We don't have crappy forests. We've got a good system going, but making it tighter and tighter and tighter, harder and harder to do things. I mean, geez, Louise, man. Come on, huh? Just let them build the pipeline, let them do the mining, let them do what they want to do. The standards are so high. We don't have mines like they do in Chile or whatever, where they're collapsing and people are dying on the inside. Like our standards are so high. They're so environmentally safe. They're safe for workers. They're safe for the environment, safe for everybody. And it makes us money. Just let us do the work.
There's less surface disturbance, and so very little likelihood of any impact on the water. Those are the things that we have responded to based on the feedback that we got, and I think that that's going to make sure that these projects proceed in a way that's going to do both, allow us to get the value out of it, but also protect the environment.
Do you understand why people might be, nervous or anxious or feel very strongly about this possible mine project?
I think that there's a concern that if you allow one, you'll allow 9, and that's not what's happening here. The coal committee identified that there were 4 advanced projects, including Grassy Mountain, that had been an active mine 60 years ago. It wasn't reclaimed particularly well, and that is the one that is being looked at for how it might be reopened, reclaimed properly, but also bring the value out of it. And so I think that there's going to be some developments. There's a number of companies that we're hoping to settle with so that they don't develop, that they return the leases to us or hand over the leases to us so that we can make sure that there isn't a future development in those areas. But as for the advanced projects, I think it was always understood that those were ones that would be very likely to go ahead if they could meet some of the regulators' views. And so we're prepared to support the process.
You can see a heckler. It's not really about the coal, is it? Like, give me a break, man. What do you mean? These people are so freaking nuts. They're so freaking nuts. They just protest whatever they want. Oh, my goodness, man. Canada's standards are so freaking high for this stuff. What do you guys think about the pipeline as well? You have Danielle Smith, who wants to privatize. She's looking for private funding for the pipeline. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool, man. A private pipeline, keep it out of government hands. That's not too bad, eh? That's not too bad at all.
City. Anna Hickok, Butchie News. Just want to ask, there was an advisory by the province that showed that the Crow's Nest Lake near the town has been, there's an advisory that the brown trout and the mountain whitefish has been caught with high levels of selenium, and it's speculative that it could have been from those old mines such as the Tent Mountain and even the Grassy Mountain itself. If those old mines are contributed to high selenium levels in those nearby bodies of water, what risk does that impose for new projects coming up in the future?
Well, it wouldn't have been associated with Grassy because where the Grassy water feeds in would be after that particular body of water. And Tent Mountain, as I understand it, has a high level of selenium. Selenium's natural in mountains, and it just happens to be high in Tent Mountain. But that's also one of the projects that I understand may go forward in a different way. The company is looking at a pumped storage system, so rather than developing the coal, they're looking at being able to use the existing infrastructure to operate as a battery backup for I believe it's a wind installation. And so that's an example of an advanced mine project that might be managed in a bit of a different way. When we look at the selenium in the water, I just have to be clear that there are water standards, and we want to be science-based. The water standards say that water is safe for drinking if it's 50 micrograms or less per liter. And in this particular case, it was 1.3 micrograms per liter, so it's well below the levels that are safe for ingestion for humans and for cattle. What we are interested in is bioaccumulation. Fish, of course, end up having, because they eat algae and then they eat fish, and then the smaller fish get eaten by the larger fish. That's one of the reasons as well why we have to look and understand a little bit more about why there's a higher level of accumulation in the fish. I think it's important for us to make sure that we've got peer-reviewed studies and that we're following the science.
And that's going to be all the questions we can take. We got to run back inside so we get the town hall started.
Premier, no matter what's said tonight, is the policy determined by the provincial government? There will be some type of coal development?
The policy has been determined by the government. What we've said is no open pit mining, no mountaintop removal, and the encouragement of the underground mining techniques. And many of the companies are looking at doing those. The proposals will have to make sure that they address those issues, address the issue of water management, and ensure that we're not seeing selenium getting into the water supply. Those are the things that we would expect of any project that would go forward. Some of them are just not going to go forward, but the advanced coal projects, we're going to follow the process.
Your own scientists did say that any coal mining in Crow's Nest Lake.
I hear you, thanks.
Why are you still here? We're having a town hall, and we're happy to hear you, but I'm just having an issue here. I just love it for you to let me finish my interview.
You don't get to wave the camera. We said no. Period. No, period.
I allowed you to be interviewed without interrupting your interviews. You guys got interviewed without interrupting your interviews. I'm just asking to be for the same courtesy. We're having
process.
I'm looking for a little bit of courtesy, that's all. Just looking for some courtesy. I just have a couple more questions to answer here.
There's a cost to that culture.
Yeah, she's doing an alright job of handling hecklers.
You are moved
so greasy with the oil from your oligarchs from the gas and fossil.
Poisoning our waters is disrespectful. Poisoning our listen to Albertans. Listen to Albertans. No, we listen to Albertans. We don't want to.
Just go inside.
Will you take that advice into account with your decision?
Well, as I mentioned, that lake in particular was impacted by Tent Mountain. And as I understand it, Tent Mountain is one of the projects that is not going ahead as a coal mine. They're looking at doing pump storage as a renewable project, and we'll be doing additional follow-up research to see if we can find out the reason for the bioaccumulation in the fish. But we were encouraged to see that the level of selenium in the water is well below what the recommended level is for drinking water safe standards.
How do you reconcile your commitment to there being no open pit mining with the reality that Grassy Mountain was exempt from the ban on open pit mining?
Well, again, we wanted to take the advice of the coal committee, and the coal committee gave us 8 recommendations, and they also identified 4 advanced coal projects. I think that we should be concerned that in the 60 years ago that it was not reclaimed to a standard that we would accept today, and the company, as part of developing the resource, would also reclaim the project to a higher standard. And I think that would be good for the environment. I think that's something that we should encourage. And if they can go through and convince the regulator that they have a good plan that abides by our policies, then we'll allow the process to play out.
If I could ask a quick follow-up. The town hall starts in like 2 minutes.
Sorry, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, it's so crazy because the people that are protesting have absolutely no idea what they're even talking about. What Danielle Smith's mining projects are doing, they're not at all affecting water, right? Like Canada's standards for these things are so freaking high. And if they were, it would be shut down internally immediately anyways. People in Canada don't, like actual Canadians, don't take pride in causing any harm to our environment, especially water sources, especially fish and stuff like that. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Oh my goodness. Anyways, now we're going to take a look at question period. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be, it's going to be entertaining to say the least, right? We're still waiting for our boy Pierre to get a seat back in the House. But in the meantime, the Conservatives are trying to hold their own, and the Liberals are not doing that good of a job. So hope you're ready for this video today. Question period is pretty decent. Before we get into it, though, I do want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get into today's question period, shall we?
We're dealing with the same old Liberal scandals. The Auditor General has released a report against the Liberal government on the multi-million-dollar Arrive Can debacle. The Liberals gave $64 million to GC Strategies, a 2-person IT firm that did no actual work and is currently under our CMP investigation. Wow. Today, this House is considering our Conservative motion to get Canadians their money back within 100 days. Will the Liberals vote to give back the $64 million to Canadians? Yes?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we will address that question in a moment, but I am devastated to learn of the Air India crash that occurred earlier this morning. The flight was carrying 242 people, one of whom was Canadian. We are in touch with our international partners, and I have been speaking with Canadians this morning. I am sure that all members of this House will join in extending our collective condolences to the families of those who have lost loved ones this morning. Thank you.
So she didn't answer the question at all.
The honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, we also extend condolences to the families. Mr. Speaker, these Liberals should not be dodging accountability. They want to hide their scandals from Canadians, but the Auditor General report is very, very clear. This Liberal government ignored the rules and allowed insiders to profit to the tune of $64 million. Wow. The Liberals have shown a complete disdain for hardworking Canadians by promoting the very same ministers who engaged in the cronyism and corruption. Why should wasteful Liberal politicians get promoted while Canadian taxpayers get a $64 million bill?
The Honourable
That's a fair
Minister
question.
for Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to note that we've implemented the measures recommended by the Auditor General in previous reports as well as internal audits. We have revoked the security clearance of GC Strategies. We have terminated all contracts with GC Strategies. We've barred GC Strategies from future contracts with the Government of Canada. We've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP because, Mr. Speaker, we will never tolerate misconduct from our suppliers or their subcontractors. Thank you.
The honourable member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
The Auditor General released a scathing audit this week on the top Arrive scam contractor, GC Strategies. This two-person company under RCMP investigation received a jaw-dropping $64 million from these Liberals. And the old ministers responsible for this all got promoted by this Prime Minister and are sitting as ministers right there, right now. Wow. Canadians are incensed by these same old Liberal ministers continuing in their corrupt ways. A simple question for their Prime Minister. When are Canadians going to get their money back?
The Honourable Minister
that is absolutely fair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will always protect the integrity of our procurement process, which is why we've implemented recommendations from the Auditor General from past reports, such as increased transparency, strengthening oversight, clarifying the roles, the responsibilities across departments. We will always hold bad actors to account, which is why, Mr. Speaker, we've taken legal actions against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. We will always protect the integrity of our procurement process.
The Honourable Member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
That answer doesn't cut it for Canadians struggling to pay their bills in record numbers. These old Liberals have turned Arrive scam into a masterclass in rewarding failure and corruption. The old ministers responsible for this scam are the same old ministers sitting over there as cabinet ministers right now. These same old ministers are ignoring the rules, allowing their insiders to get rich with taxpayers' hard-earned money. Why do corrupt Liberal ministers keep getting promoted and Canadians keep getting the bill?
That's a good question. The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be absolutely clear. We will never tolerate misconduct from our suppliers or their subcontractors, which is why we've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. We've barred them from contracting with the Canadian government. We've revoked their security clearance, Mr. Speaker. This is the mandate we've been elected on to make sure that we have the best-in-class procurement system in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has confirmed what Conservatives feared. The Liberal government paid over $60 million for a project that should have cost just $80,000. And what's the result? Waste and incompetence. And yet no minister lost their job. And what's worse, they got a reward in being promoted in cabinet. Will the Prime Minister do the honourable thing and vote in favour of our motion to give this money back to Canadian taxpayers? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. we will always protect the integrity of our procurement system. That's why we are implementing the recommendations made by the Auditor General in her previous report. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we have referred cases to the RCMP. We've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've taken away their security clearance. We have terminated all contracts with GC Strategies, and they're barred from contracting with the Government of Canada for the next 7 years. Why? Because we will never tolerate misconduct from our suppliers or their contractors. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's report is scathing. Contracts were given without any competition, without any oversight, and without any justification. And while Canadians are getting poorer, the Liberals are making certain companies richer, and they're promoting their ministers responsible for this fiasco. Can the Prime Minister explain why, instead of requiring accountability, he's rewarding those who allowed this wasting of public funds? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to be crystal clear. We will never accept any misconduct from our suppliers or their contractors. We will always hold them responsible, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, we've terminated all contracts with GC Strategies over a year ago. We took away their security clearance. We will prevent them from contracting with the Government of Canada for the next 7 years. And, Mr. Speaker, we've also taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. Why? Because we will always protect the integrity of our procurement system. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will be moving closure on C5. The House has been sitting just for 3 weeks, and already he wants to steamroll a bill through the House. And not just any bill. C5 would give the Prime Minister the power to govern by decree when it comes to fossil fuel projects. Bill C5 completely guts environmental assessments. Bill C5 threatens Quebec's powers and the rights of Indigenous peoples. It makes no sense to impose this bill without debate, without committee study, and without hearing from witnesses. Will the Prime Minister let Parliament do its job? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, Canadians and Quebecers spoke loud and clear of the necessity of transforming our economy. Yes, in part because of the trade war, which was provoked illegally by our friends, our neighbours to the south. And we are here to pivot towards a modern economy to help growth in this country, to give good jobs to Quebecers, good jobs to Canadians across the country. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill is necessary and it will move forward. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is going to need to leave the banker behind. He's going to need to learn how to act like a Democrat. C5 raises major debates about the environment and Quebec's sovereignty over its own territory. If there's any bill that just needs to be studied thoroughly, it's this one. The Prime Minister has no right to impose C5 under closure when the bill gives him exceptional powers, unlike anything that we've seen before. Is that the Prime Minister's intention, to bypass Parliament and govern by decree like Donald Trump? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers elected 44 Liberal members. That's the highest number of Liberal members from Quebec since 1980. They all ran under a Liberal platform that on page 1 spoke about the necessity of acting quickly to accelerate growth in this country, to break down barriers between provinces and create one Canadian economy. We are acting in a democratic way, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the 44 Liberals from Quebec all voted yesterday to steal $814 million from Quebecers. The Liberals from Quebec voted to make Quebecers pay for election gifts for Canadians. The Liberals from Quebec voted against the unanimous request of the National Assembly of Quebec to reimburse Quebecers. The Liberals elected by Quebecers, who were afraid that the Conservatives would take us back to the Stone Age, abolished the carbon tax, and then they rewarded Canadians with our money. Mr. Speaker, aren't they ashamed of working against their own constituents? The Honourable Minister of Canadian identity and culture. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind my colleague with respect that we still have a carbon price in Canada for big polluters, for major emitters, and that reduces 3 times the number of emissions as the consumer carbon price. It's a strong carbon pricing system, and the federal price per ton is double the price in Quebec, $59 in Quebec. It's $59 in Quebec and $85 for Canada. We will continue to build a strong economy for Canada while protecting the environment.
Alberta, Kawartha Lakes.
Speaker, Liberal consultants are getting millions in contracts without the required security clearances or experience. Worse, they don't even have to do any work. The Auditor General found evidence that nearly half of government contracts were paid but not actually completed. While Liberal insiders get rich, Canadian families struggle to pay for food. In true Liberal fashion, of course, the ministers responsible have been promoted by this Prime Minister. So when will this government support today's Conservative motion to ensure that Canadians get their money back?
That's right. The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Would be nice if they
much,
deemed
Mr.
it
Speaker,
illegal
and I want to thank the Auditor General for her
we should
report.
get the money
We've
returned.
already acted
That's
on previous recommendations
pretty
she's put
common sense.
forward. We've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP because we will never tolerate bad behavior from our suppliers or their contractors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes.
Speaker, it's clear the Prime Minister has the backs of Liberal insiders and backroom cronies, not hard-working Canadians. It's business as usual for this Prime Minister, who has no plans to cut the gravy train to Liberal consultants, which have no intention to actually complete work. While the RCMP investigate fraud on Canadians, those ministers responsible, they get a pat on the back and they get promoted. Will the Prime Minister today impose a lifetime ban on the founders of GC Strategies and all aligned entities and individuals, and of course, get Canadians their money back?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've highlighted in previous answers, we will always protect the integrity of our procurement process, which is why we've put in place the Office of Supplier Integrity, which has banned GC Strategies for 7 years. We've revoked their security clearance. We've taken legal actions against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP because we'll never tolerate bad actions from suppliers or their contractors. But when he talks about having the backs of Canadians, Mr. Speaker, they have an opportunity to support a tax cut for 22 million Canadians right after question period. Hopefully they'll do it for a change. Thank you.
Member for Newtecumseh, Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government ignored procurement rules, accountability, and basic common sense to funnel sweetheart contracts to their friends at GC Strategies, the ones who were behind ArriveCan. They handed out an eye-watering $64 million in taxpayer money to these Liberal insiders with no evidence that any work was actually completed. Will the Liberals take responsibility, show respect to Canadian taxpayers, and get the money back?
The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Mr. Speaker, I think I've made it abundantly clear in previous answers that we will always protect the integrity of our procurement process, which is why we've taken legal actions against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. And, Mr. Speaker, we will always hold bad actors to account. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Newtecumseh, Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, that answer wouldn't take the scum off rice pudding. The report from the Auditor General was clear. No work was done. The only thing delivered was a check to Liberal insiders. Despite an RCMP investigation and $64 million wasted, the cabinet ministers responsible weren't fired, they were promoted. New titles, bigger offices, all courtesy of this Prime Minister. Talk about failing upwards. Why is it that under this Liberal government, failure is rewarded and Canadian taxpayers get stuck with the bill?
The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I've noted before, we will always defend the integrity of our procurement process. We will never tolerate any form of misconduct from our suppliers or their contractors, which is why we've revoked GC Strategies security clearance. We've terminated all contracts more than a year ago. Now the Office of Supplier Integrity has barred them from contracting with the Canadian government. We've referred cases to the RCMP. We've taken legal actions. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because we will always hold bad actors responsible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Quebec, Mactaquac.
What
a complete and totally comprehensive non-answer that was. Earlier this week, the Auditor General released their scathing audit stating that the GC Strategies was paid $64 million for the ArriveCan app with little to no evidence of any work having been completed. The Auditor General made note that this is just one example of a likely widespread issue. Mr. Speaker, there may be a new Prime Minister, but it's the same old Liberal government. Will the Prime Minister stand up today, vote for our Conservative motion to return this money to hardworking Canadian taxpayers, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister
There you go. Put some dummies in the chat for that, huh?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Auditor General for her work and note that we've acted on all the recommendations that she's put forward in the past, but we didn't stop there. We ended all contracts with GC Strategies over a year ago. We've taken away their security clearance. We've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. Why? Well, it's simple, because we will always defend the integrity of our procurement system, and we will always hold bad actors and their contractors accountable. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General published in her report on Tuesday that the Liberal government did not respect the rules concerning contracts given to GC Strategies. $64 million were given to this company, made up of just 2 people. And what's more, there's no proof that any work was done. The Conservatives have presented a motion this morning which would prevent this government from getting government contracts for life. Will the Liberal government vote with us and pay back Canadians?
There you go.
The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Sounds like the Conservatives
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Again.
And the member will be happy to know that the Office of Supplier Integrity that we put in place took a decision last week to prevent GC Strategies from contracting with the Government of Canada. But over a year ago, we ended all contracts with GC Strategies. We took legal action against the company. We referred cases to the RCMP. And why, Mr. Speaker? Because we will never tolerate misconduct from our suppliers or their contractors. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, we're not saying they should be terminated for 7 years. We're saying they should be barred for life. It's just scandal after scandal from this Liberal government. The Liberals ignore the rules. They let their friends get rich, and it's taxpayers in Beauce and across Canada who are paying the price. The Prime Minister had the opportunity to change things by replacing the ministers responsible for this. But no. What did he do? He promoted them.
Yeah, no accountability.
Why, with the Liberals, are politicians always rewarded? And why is it Canadians who have to pay the bill? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We will always defend the integrity of our procurement system, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, over a year ago, we ended all contracts with GC Strategies. We took away their security clearance. We've implemented the Auditor General's recommendations from her previous reports to ensure that bad actors are held responsible. We've referred cases to the RCMP concerning this company. We've taken legal action against GC Strategies. And, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we will always hold accountable bad actors. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, what do a foreign sponsor of the assassination of a Canadian on Canadian soil, a tyrant who ordered the dismemberment of a journalist in a Turkish consulate, and a tortuous leader who silences all forms of opposition have in common? I'll give you a hint, Mr. Speaker. They will all be the Prime Minister's honoured guests at the G7. We certainly wouldn't want human rights to get in the way of good business opportunities. That's the new Liberal government for you. Will the Prime Minister see reason and cancel these terrible invitations immediately? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the world is facing an international security crisis. We must never forget that our sovereignty and our security and our prosperity are linked closely to general global stability. Canada believes in cooperation, and the G7 is an essential forum, Mr. Speaker, which allows leaders from around the world to have productive and frank discussions. Mr. Speaker, security, stability, and protection are necessary for Canadians. At the same time, we need to have these conversations. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, to those fleeing persecution, terror and war, wrote Justin Trudeau, welcome to Canada. We all remember the fiasco that tweet caused and the impact that it had on our ability to welcome people to Canada. Nevertheless, Justin Trudeau wanted to welcome the persecuted, and now the new Prime Minister has chosen to welcome the persecutors. Mr. Speaker, are there any Liberals on the other side who will speak to their leader, the Prime Minister, and ask him to cancel his invitations to Modi, Ben Salman and Ben Zayed? Or do we have to understand that for the Liberals right now, human rights, well, they've just been thrown out the door? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, as I've already said, the G7 is an important forum for international discussions with international leaders. At the same time, we have to have the necessary conversations around security and around the protection of our citizens, of Canadians. That is our absolute priority, Mr. Speaker. And we will act. We will protect Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson-Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, there are questions on the Public Safety Minister's recent recusals. Was the Ethics Commissioner consulted prior to the Public Safety Minister setting up an internal conflict screen? And can the Prime Minister explain to this House why the Minister has recused himself?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in all national security decisions, my utmost concern is that of the safety of Canadians. I will support law enforcement and national security agencies who do their work impartially and effectively in an abundance of caution and to ensure that there is no perception of any conflict. I've asked the public safety officials to implement a screen on national security issues relating to the Tamil community.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson-Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, in British Columbia, an offender was recently sentenced to house arrest for possessing child sexual abuse and exploitation material. Mr. Speaker, the victims of such deplorable materials are living a psychological life sentence. Now, who do I blame for this? Not the judge, not the prosecutor, not the defense lawyer. I blame weak liberal laws that allow people like this to serve their sentence on the couch. Will this public safety minister recognize this injustice and stop allowing house arrest for people who watch sexual abuse of children?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and
Mr. Speaker, let me condemn in the harshest possible terms sexual crimes committed against children. As a former prosecutor, I'm sure my honourable colleague would know that the law on the books today actually holds a mandatory minimum penalty of 1 year imprisonment for these types of heinous crimes. Mr. Speaker, I hope that this does not become a bipartisan issue. We want to work together to implement reforms not only to punish heinous crimes, but to prevent these harms from becoming a lifetime problem for vulnerable children.
The Honourable Member for Okanagan
Prison is the answer. Mr. Speaker, despite having world-class shipbuilders like Seaspan in Vancouver, BC Ferries has chosen a Chinese state-owned enterprise to build 4 new ships, even though the Prime Minister has declared China the biggest security threat to Canada. Meanwhile, the Liberals are providing BC Ferries with $36 million with no conditions to protect Canadian workers. Will the Minister grow a spine of Canadian-manufactured steel and make Canadian jobs a requirement for this funding, or will she side with Premier Eby in selling out our ship and steel building industries?
The Honourable Minister of Transport and Internal Trade.
Mr. Speaker, our government will always side with Canadian workers, particularly our steel and aluminum sectors that are being battered right now. I was disappointed and concerned when I learned of this procurement, particularly at this moment when Canadian workers need our support. BC Ferries is entirely under provincial jurisdiction. The support BC Ferries receives from Transport Canada is entirely for operations and has no There is no capital expenditure.
The honourable member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, what a great non-answer. Look, yesterday, the Minister of Transport refused to act on my concern over BC Ferries buying 4 ships from a Chinese state-owned shipyard and used the excuse that it was not a federal project, which was not the question that I asked. The Liberals should be supporting Canadian shipyards and our economy instead of supporting CCP-owned shipyards and their economy. So again, I ask, will the Liberals attach the obvious condition of buying Canadian-built ships in order for BC Ferries to get their over $30 million Liberal subsidy?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I absolutely agree we need to be supporting Canadian shipbuilders. That's why we have a national shipbuilding strategy. I absolutely agree we need to be supporting Canadian steel and aluminum workers. Yes. And further, I agree that we need to be alive to national security challenges and bear those in mind when it comes to procurement. I have spoken to my BC counterpart about this issue, and I would underscore BC Ferries is entirely under provincial jurisdiction. I do not think any BC MPs would challenge federal support for operations of ferries.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, we've learned that Canadian production of critical minerals could fall by almost 60% by 2040. It's not really surprising, as mining projects under the Liberals take forever to develop. However, we have exceptional geological potential in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, including phosphate. Since 2018, we have been working to have it added to the list of critical minerals. Mr. Speaker, why are the Liberals incapable of extracting our natural resources?
Of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, mining is crucial to our economy, and Canada is facing American tariffs. We must support our mining workers. That's why we will speed up permitting of new mines by cutting red tape and approving projects within 2 years. This will create jobs for Canadians, grow our economy, and provide more opportunity for mining workers in our country. We hope our members across the aisle will support the One Canadian Act.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government has introduced the One Economy Act, which aims to help advance major projects through the regulatory process. We have seen Indigenous people across Canada strongly assert the requirement for consultation before major projects are approved. Can the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations tell us about how consultations will happen under the new Act?
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples, consistent with Section 35 of the Constitution and the duty to consult. It requires it during both the process of determining which projects are in the national interest and, most importantly, once a project is selected during the permitting process. Both steps require our Indigenous partners. I look forward to continuing to engage with partners to ensure the success of this legislation and the involvement of Indigenous peoples in moving our economy forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the average Canadian family is going to spend $800 more on food this year because of Liberal inflationary spending. The Calgary Food Bank says that 65% of working Calgarians are now experiencing severe food insecurity. What affects this, of course, is bad government budgeting. Deficits lead to inflation, and this government plans to spend 8% more this coming year. The Liberals want to go on a spending spree and force Canadians onto a diet. Will the Prime Minister set the table and finally serve up this year's budget?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, Mr. Speaker, good news for Canadians. Over 22 million Canadians are going to receive a tax cut thanks to the work of this Parliament. And further good news, Mr. Speaker, in the last elections, Canadians coast to coast to coast said the kinds of measures that are helping them, like affordable childcare, like the Canada Child Benefit that's indexed to inflation, like the National Food Program, like the Canada Disability Benefit that will be available next month. These are the kinds of things that are making a difference for Canadians, and we just hope the Conservative Conservatives will stop voting against them.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are delaying tabling a budget as it's expected to show a supersized deficit, which will increase inflation even further. The higher the deficits, the higher the inflation. The prices Canadians pay for food is dependent upon this government's budget. But don't worry, the government's budgets only affect Canadians who eat. Will the government stop driving up costs and bring forward a budget so Canadians can feed their families without going further into debt?
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Revenue Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's look at some economic facts. Inflation has dropped from 8.1 to 1.7% over the last 2 years. Our real GDP numbers are growing. We've had workforce participation of 65.3% versus 62.5% compared to the USA. We have a AAA Moody's credit rating. Mr. Speaker, the fundamentals of our economy are very strong. We have a strong mandate from Canadians, and we're going to continue to work together across the aisle to get things done for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, yes, let's look at some actual facts. Stats Can reports that for every dollar of disposable income, Canadians now owe $1.74, the worst debt ratio in the G7. Oshawa's unemployment is at 9.1%, and the TD Bank warns of a looming recession with 100,000 jobs at risk. This government's response is to blow through $500 billion with no budget, no plan, and no accountability. Will the Liberals finally table a budget, or will their silence continue to speak louder than their commitment to Canadians?
Hey, if you guys haven't already, I'd like to encourage you guys, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all know who brought it home in the last election. It was every member on this side of the House. Why did Canadians vote for this Liberal government? Because they know we're compassionate and we care about the affordability challenges that they're facing. We have a plan to create good jobs, build a stronger economy, and make life more affordable. What do Conservatives have? None of the above. They have complaints, anger, and an absent leader, and divisive rhetoric. We're delivering for Canadians and making Canada strong.
They're acting like they won by a landslide.
In yesterday's Waterloo Regional Record, Ontario businesses are freezing summer hiring. Unemployment in the region is up.
Sorry, I can't hear the question, so we'll start from the top.
In yesterday's Waterloo Regional Record, Ontario businesses are freezing summer hiring. Unemployment in the region is up 7.3%, and TD Bank says there's a looming recession with job losses of 100,000 jobs, causing local businesses to focus on staying lean. Nearly 1/3 of Canadian small businesses have adjusted or paused their summer hiring plans, according to a survey by Merchant Growth. Kitchener businesses need a plan. A budget is a plan. Why does this government refuse to heed our calls and table a budget that reverses their inflationary spending?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, good news for Canadian youth this summer. In addition to the 70,000 Canada summer jobs, we're adding 6,000 more, Mr. Speaker, all across the country. We know this is an emergency valve, Mr. Speaker, for youth unemployment. That is indeed rising. But, Mr. Speaker, what won't help is votes against the measures that Canadians are looking for this summer. Mr. Speaker, what we know is that Canadians vote every single time there's an opportunity to help the constituents in their riding. We won't do that, Mr. Speaker. We'll stand up for Canadian families.
The honourable member for Mission Abbotsford.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small businesses fought for 5 years to receive the carbon tax rebate. Now that the money has been dispersed to small businesses across Canada, they are seeking clarification as to whether or not the Canada Revenue Agency will treat it as a taxable benefit. Can the Government of Canada clarify today, yes or no, are carbon tax rebates taxable?
Good question.
How do we not even have clarity on that?
The Honourable
Get
Minister of Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, as we know, small businesses are the backbone of our Canadian economy, and our new government has their back. We're cutting taxes for small businesses and red tape. We're breaking down interprovincial trade barriers by July 1st and helping businesses go digital. We also welcome our middle-class tax cut, which will help entrepreneurs get well-deserved tax break while they can. And Mr. Speaker, we will always be there for small businesses. And let's forget that we have also cut the carbon tax for small business as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Swift.
They literally have, the Liberals have a CRA MP right there who's already answered questions, and they chose the Women and Gender Studies MP? How does this even make sense? Canada is not a productive country when this happens.
Current Grasslands Kindersley.
Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan is responsible for over 1/5 of the world's canola exports, and China being one of the largest buyers. The communist regime in Beijing implemented 100% tariffs on canola oil and meal, and has been radio silence from the Prime Minister. Farmers plan their crop rotations years in advance and have had to ride out this trade war all on their own. Will the Prime Minister prioritize our farmers for once and end China's tariffs on our canola, or is he too compromised from Brookfield's $250 million loan from a Chinese bank?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Well, it's a little over 3 weeks, Mr. Speaker, and I'm finally getting to my feet. First and foremost, I want to thank the people of Malpeque for putting me here. And my wife and my family. Mr. Speaker, it is. It's immensely important for us. Mr. Speaker, I'll be traveling to the Prairie Provinces this weekend to meet with farmers to see firsthand the effect of the canola tariffs. But I will say this, Mr. Speaker. We've had the International Trade Minister meeting with officials and the Prime Minister. We're moving in the right direction, and we always stand up for farmers.
The Honourable Member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, farmers in Souris Moose Mountain and across the prairies are being crushed by 100% crippling tariffs on canola. The Liberal government, they've done nothing. These unjust tariffs are jeopardizing family farms, threatening livelihoods, and undermining the backbone of our agricultural economy. While producers urgently seek leadership and support, the Liberals remain silent. When will the Liberals take real concrete action to eliminate these punitive tariffs on Canadian canola and for once stand up for Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me the opportunity to talk about how important farming is in this country, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 9 jobs, Mr. Speaker, related to farming. 6.75% of our GDP related to farming. Mr. Speaker, I've spoken to every First Minister across this country, and one thing that is in common, we're united in our front against these tariffs, and we will stay that way, Mr. Speaker, because it's going to benefit everybody.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, just days after the minister's promise-filled visit to ArcelorMittal this past weekend in Hamilton, they have announced a closure to their long wire mill, resulting in a loss of 153 mortgage-paying jobs in my community. Yesterday, I spoke to a concerned father whose daughter, Amanda, lost her job to the mill closure. Her father stated that the Prime Minister promised tariff relief on TV. Mr. Speaker, when will Amanda get her tariff relief?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the question. These illegal and unjustified tariffs, and we're fighting them every day, and they're hurting workers on both sides of the border. Canadian workers, Canadian companies, this government will not be bullied. We're going to fight against these tariffs. Every job, defending every job, every business in the Hamilton, in the Sioux, and across Canada.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot take that answer to the hard workers of Hamilton. This closure is not just a local story. It is a warning sign to all working Canadians in this country. The Prime Minister promised elbows up with the United States and to collect $20 billion. All we've seen is elbows down. I ask this question on behalf of the workers of Hamiltonian's Industrial Corridor and Canadians. Mr. Speaker, to the Prime Minister, is this the end of closures or just the beginning?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, je vous rappelle.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind everyone that these tariffs were imposed by the United States. These are American tariffs that were imposed on products. Our government is here to support workers, companies, so we can weather the storm. And we're looking forward to everyone's collaboration to weather the storm. Thank you very much. The Honourable Member for Alfred Pélan. Mr. Speaker, our new government was elected to implement a strong vision for nature conservation, both on land and in the water, as well as improved access for Canadians. Can the Secretary of State for Nature inform this House of our upcoming actions to protect nature in Canada? The Honourable Secretary of State for Nature. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Alfred Pélan for his excellent question. I would also like to take a moment, as I rise for the first time in this House, to thank all the constituents of the wonderful riding of Châteauguay-les-Jardins de Napierville for their trust. Nature is a fundamental part of our Canadian identity. It unites us, and irrespective of their political stripe, all Canadians love nature. Our new government will work with provinces, territories, Indigenous peoples, and all stakeholders to protect nature. That's what a strong, united Canada looks like.
For Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, in the last Parliament, these Liberals forced through one piece of censorship legislation after another. Bill C-18, which of course stops the spread of news on social media outlets. Bill C-11, which controls what Canadians can see and say online. And then came Bill C-63, which is bloated censorship legislation, which actually brought in an internet czar and controls freedom of speech. The Liberals claim that this is a, quote, new government, so my curiosity is this, whoever is in charge over there, of course, will they commit to respecting Canadians and, of course, stop censoring them?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for decades we've witnessed journalists losing their jobs, newsrooms shutting down, and local media going bankrupt. Access to fact-based information from coast to coast to coast is essential to keep Canadians informed. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, my Conservative colleague did not believe that preserving this pillar of our democracy is important. On our side, we chose to pass the Online News Act to ensure that journalists can continue their important work for our country, for our democracy, for our Canadian unity.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
So what I'm hearing is that this is the same old government, absolutely hell-bent on continuing to censor what Canadians can see and say online. My question is with regards to Bill C-63 and going forward. You see, C-63 doesn't just target predators, it targets opinions, it targets freedom of thought, it targets discourse within the online sphere. It institutes thought police, for crying out loud. It's a Trojan horse for further government control. So I ask again, in any future legislation going forward, will this Liberal government commit to respecting Canadians and making sure that they do not censor them?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just about everything that the member said in her intervention is wrong. Bill C-11 ensures that Canadian artists get rewarded as they should by online platform, Mr. Speaker. Bill C-11 makes sure that Canadian content can be discovered by Canadians, by my kids, by all of our kids, instead of just international artists, Mr. Speaker. That's exactly what what Bill C-11 does. It gives the opportunity for Canadians to discover Canadian artists, something we should all support, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Mr. Speaker, baseless smears like that are why these Liberals can't be trusted to regulate speech in this country. For years, this Liberal government has determined to censor what Canadians see and say online. From Bill C-11, which put the Liberals in control of YouTube algorithms, to Bill C-18, which squeezed out small and independent media, and to their thought crime Bill C-63. Now we learn in the National Post that cabinet ministers over there are all clamoring over who gets to be responsible for the latest online censorship law. So will the minister who gets to censor what Canadians say please reveal themselves now?
Attaboy. Put a W down for that, huh?
The Honourable Minister.
Even Google agreed that they they should do this. Google will pay $100 million to help Canadian journalism in this country. An international US-based company would agree to do that, but the Conservative Party of Canada would vote against this, would prevent that from happening, would want to prevent our media from getting $100 million so that there's more local content, more journalists hired in our newsroom across the country. It is simply unthinkable. It is immoral, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fentanyl has torn through communities and ripped families apart throughout various areas of Canada. Our government was given a strong mandate to keep all Canadians safe. Can the Minister of Public Safety update the House on the recent law enforcement seizures which are keeping drugs off the streets of Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to thank my honourable colleague from Humber River Black Creek for her question and for her hard work. Every member of this House knows someone impacted by the fentanyl crisis. Earlier this week, the Ontario Provincial Police announced 2 operations that seized 43.5 kilograms of fentanyl, the largest ever fentanyl seizure in its history. Through the Strong Borders Act, we will ensure that police across the country have the tools needed to replicate the success of these operations. We will always be there, Mr. Speaker, to keep Canadians protected.
I don't feel protected by you at all.
Ils attendent qu'on décède pour.
They're waiting for us to die before they give us our money.
Ain't that the
issue,
truth?
Mr. Speaker, is that the government disbursed $70 million to manage a problem. Since 2019, the company only reimbursed 16 victims, rejected hundreds of requests, like Mr. Notte. When will Epic be fired and a reimbursement be made so the money can go directly in the pocket of victims in Thetford mines and not in the pockets of consultants and lawyers?
Hey, if you guys haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to hit the like button and subscribe.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, no. And we know what all the victims have gone through. I will go back to my colleague's question later because I don't have an answer right now.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Speaker, during the last election, the Prime Minister said the old relationship we had with the United States based on deepening integration of our economies and military cooperation is over. But yesterday, a leaked document reveals his government is willing to participate in Donald Trump's Golden Dome missile defense system. Former Liberal Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy called this a betrayal of the vision Canadians voted for. Why is the Prime Minister deepening military integration with an unstable partner when we should be pivoting away?
Why are you
the Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, for 75 years, our government's been has been an essential partner in strengthening NORAD, the only binational command in the world. We know that we live in a more dangerous world. That's why this new government has undertaken a wide array of discussions with the United States about a new security and economic relationship that benefits both of our sovereign nations. For example, the Prime Minister recently made a $6 billion new investment in an Arctic over-the-horizon radar system. We're actively strengthening, Mr. Speaker, Canada's presence in the continent, and we will build our country's national defence capabilities of all kinds.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Bill C-5 violates constitutional obligations, eradicates environmental protections, compromises workers' health and safety, and fails to hold corporations accountable in cases where violence is inflicted on Indigenous women and girls. A call to justice from the National Inquiry. Mr. Speaker, we thought Pierre Poilievre lost his seat, but it seems like he's leading the Liberal Party. Maybe that's why, Mr. Speaker. Is that why the government is trying to fast-track Bill C-5?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that Canada is facing a critical moment. We all know our country is being battered by U.S. tariffs. Last week, I was in Saskatoon, and around the table were premiers, NDP premiers, Conservative premiers, Liberal premiers. They all understood now is the time to build Canada, to tear down barriers to trade between ourselves. I really hope all members of this House will recognize the urgency of the moment and support this essential legislation.
And that concludes question period for today.
There you go. There you go. In fact, so this was pretty crazy, man. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but at some point in here, they actually called for, who was it? Jamie Schmel. Okay, let's go back here. The Conservatives watch my videos and they listen to my advice. So the other day I had a rant on X. I did a big rant on, well, I was at the end of my question period where I basically said, what the heck is wrong with the Conservatives? Why aren't they calling for, like, they're calling for accountability with GC Strategies, but they're not calling for the members of GC Strategies to be banned from doing any business with the government? Because you can make a new company. You can just buy a shelf company and you can have it in your name, all the documents ready to go in like less than an hour. Boom, like that. Super easy. But the people that are involved with GC Strategies are the problem. The company is just a shell. It's just a name. It's just an entity. Whoever is controlling that entity is the problem. And that was my rant on the end of a question period the other day and a live stream. But I believe I've been told that they actually bring this up in this question period and I missed it. Oh, it's a second question. Okay, right here.
Prime Minister has the backs of Liberal insiders and backroom cronies, not hard-working Canadians. It's business as usual for this Prime Minister, who has no plans to cut the gravy train to Liberal consultants, which have no intention to actually complete work. While the RCMP investigate fraud on Canadians, those ministers responsible, they get a pat on the back and they get promoted. Will the Prime Minister today impose a lifetime ban on the founders of GC Strategies and all aligned entities and individuals, and of course, get Canadians their money back? Here.
I did that, ladies and gentlemen, by yelling and screaming. See, when people say, stop going after the Conservatives, stop, you're attacking, what are you, a liberal? You're attacking the Conservatives, stop it. Shut the hell up. The Conservatives are not void of criticism. They had an opportunity to say this from the get-go, and they didn't until what I said went viral in this country. Your voice matters. All of our voices matter. And if the Conservatives, the team that you're cheering for, is not doing enough, speak up about it. You're doing a disservice to the country by staying silent. Every voice and every vote matters. Some ridings got flipped off of a few votes. Every vote matters. We know that now for fucking certain. And we know that our voices matter because I'm just a dude who's not even wearing pants in my RV who bitched and complained and yelled into this microphone that has a filter on it so it can't go too high because I yelled so much because I'm quitting cigarettes and I'm hyped up on coffee, and now the Conservative MPs are mentioning exactly what I said 3 days or 2 days ago. Your voice matters. Don't stay silent when it comes to this stuff. If the Conservatives, the team that you're cheering for, if they're not doing enough, and you want them to do better, complain about it. Say something about it. Do something about it. Because you just saw the proof is in the pudding. I did that, and they just fixed their words in the House. I need a cigarette. I need a cigarette. Or a sip of coffee. That's the end of the live stream. Bye-bye. Hope you enjoyed that rant.